All right. Doug Helvering.
Yeah, doctor.
This guy's quite accomplished, isn't he? My
Yes,
goodness gracious.
yes.
Way too classy for our show, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is my lighting okay in here, or do I look like a corpse? Because I really hated my lighting in the Ralph Cheapers, and I look like the Walking Dead.
Well, you generally look like a corpse, as it is. I'm not
Shit.
sure.
You bust my balls on that now, right?
I'm not sure what you
Jesus Christ.
expect. Can't
Thanks a lot.
can't work miracles
Yeah.
here.
Fuck you.
I just got a comment on our YouTube from a guy named Tim MC, on the David DeFay video. He says, "Holy fuck, great catch."
Oh, nice.
I go, all right.
Nice.
Yeah, and I've been getting quite a bit on the show we did with Eric.
Yeah.
A lot.
I
of
saw
people,
the views kind of
numbers bumped.
jump up on that. So,
Yeah.
Which is to be expected, I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was pretty.
That was hard.
That was hard. That's hard. It's been hard, man. I cried. It's like I felt like I know the guy. I mean, I've been a fan since like '85 or so, but I kind of felt like we knew him. I mean, he was just so cool, and that was what was so hard. Like, Jesus, we just talked to him a few weeks ago.
It just
Yeah. Who would have ever thought like this was guy's going to be gone in just a few weeks? Like,
Yeah.
That's just
that anticipation, guys. Too. We all look forward to meeting him on tour next
Yeah,
year.
April.
right. All right. Should be Doug here any moment.
I haven't
It
heard
looks like
back
he
from him.
does a lot of work with the church and stuff. So you better watch
Right.
your language, Mark.
Yeah, I know.
Better watch your F bombs, pal.
Oh,
There he is.
Hello. Oh, he's connecting.
Yep.
Hello, Dr. Helvering. How are you?
Hey, y'all.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, sir.
Hey, Doug.
Great to meet you.
I found the right Zoom.
Yes, you did. We're
Hi.
here.
Yeah,
Excellent.
we are virtually connected. Yes.
I
Good.
saw your live stream earlier. You had that cool beret on. So yeah, cool deal.
That means
I
on
like
that means on a
like it.
Sunday I did not do my hair. So
Go.
Nice.
Nice. That's all I do on Sunday, as you could.
Yeah. It's his hair day.
Yeah, exactly.
Greetings! This is David DePay from Burgess Jail, and you are listening to Heavy Metal Horror. Stay tuned for more metal and horror. Yow!
I am Montag, master of illusion. What goes up must come down, but not always.
Hey, I'm Chop Top, and this one's gonna be heavy.
And Dreadbull.
And you are listening to Heavy Metal. All right. Oh, tonight.
Well done, Doug. Well
Yes.
Thank you
tonight,
very much.
kiddies,
Thank you.
We have a wonderful guest tonight, Dr. Doug Helvering. And boy, we are so glad that you came on our show. Thank you very much.
it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. So just up front, I found you on YouTube because I became a fan of your music reaction videos, and we're going to talk about that. But that's how I came across, and I love that your take, how different it is from the other music reaction videos. So I'm excited to learn more about that. I think we all are. So,
Sure.
But I think the first question we all want to ask is, where did your love of music come from?
Oh man. I didn't grow up in a musical family. My parents are both relatively musically illiterate. They do like some things, but I didn't grow up in a household that listened to a lot of music, popular or classical. Really, there just wasn't. We were a sports family, so that we were just busy doing that stuff, and whatever we could catch on the radio, we caught. But when I our family moved to Omaha, Nebraska, when I was in the 8th grade or going into the 8th grade. And I remember just sitting down with the guidance counselor and then like going through what my schedule was going to be for that year. And the choir director happened to walk through and said, "Hey, you should be in choir, take choir. You don't need to study hall. You should take choir." I'm like, I have never sang in my life. and I had know nothing about music. And he said, well, in the 8th grade choir this year, we have like 35 girls and like 6 or 7 boys. I'm like, what time is choir? And it was a great way to meet new friends. It was the scariest thing that I had ever tried. Getting standing near other people and opening your mouth and trying to match pitch, that sort of thing. But it became the hardest thing that I ever tried. But I kept trying to figure out, what is it about this? So I just fell into just keep coming back to it because it was so damn interesting to me. Like, how does this work? I would go to a piano, never had, music lessons or anything, and said, well, if that sounds like that, if I go from this note to this note, well, that's the same number of notes different from this note to this note. And what if I play this and play this, and start just figuring out from like just patterns. And it was just, I can create sounds. This is pretty cool. And so throughout high school, I maintained doing sports, but I always kept the music stuff on the side. And by the time I got to my senior year, I was almost more of a music kid than I was a sports kid. Having pretty bad injuries didn't hurt. Well, it did hurt at the time, but by the time I got into college, I wanted to keep doing music or singing in the choir because I really enjoyed it. And, like into the first year of school, I wasn't a music major, and all my friends that were in choir they were doing their theory homework, and I could figure it out faster than they could. And they're like, you need to either shut up or join the music department. So I did. And it's just become a wild ride ever since. And my love of the art form has just grown and grown and grown. And especially this year, I figured out there's a lot of musicians that I had no idea existed. And I'm trying to catch up.
Oh, that's awesome. You kind of touched on what was going to be my next question, was like, what about musical theory and composition appeals to you? Like, what is it? I love that you're self-taught, no musical background, self-taught, but to move on to composition and theory, that's a whole other level. So
I was self-taught in like high school, but I did end up so I did 10 years of academic study in music. So my doctoral degree is in music composition. Mm-hmm. I'm a puzzle builder. I love puzzles. I love crosswords. I love anything that involves like intersecting like pieces or ideas, and music was like, oh, these are building blocks, and they're sonic building blocks, and I can move that over there and this over there and create a whole new sound. And that's pretty neat. How did this guy do it? How did that guy do it? And it just became what possesses your day. And because I think I was further behind in terms of my awareness of all this music that was already out there than a bunch of my friends, I was always playing catch up. So the way that I was able to make a name for myself among my peers was to create my own sounds. And I ended up doing that. That was also right around the time where desktop publishing for like computer notation, music notation was new and available to us. And I learned that software, and it was just off to the races from there.
Okay. So that puzzle piece element, was that what your dissertation was on?
My dissertation was the writing of a major work. Okay. My doctoral degree. So in music, we have a PhD, which is a research-based degree. Your thesis or dissertation would be like the writing of a book. Right. For me, I have a Doctor of Musical Arts, a DMA, and that's a performance-based degree. So as a composer, my seminal work was the writing specifically of a Requiem Mass. Okay. I wrote it's a 40-minute 9-movement work in 2 versions for both. It's choir and orchestra or choir and organ. And there's an accompanying write-up about it, it's in the library at the University of Kansas.
Wow, is this what got played at Carnegie? I saw this in your bio on YouTube.
No. That one didn't. Actually, I've had some pieces at Carnegie, but the one my first one was a short form a cappella piece. Carnegie Hall does a bunch of like regular subscription concerts where like big name performance organizations use the hall, but they also partner with organizations in New York that bring in a bunch of scholastic and community organizations from around the world and bring them to New York. They get to hang out in New York for a few days, see the sights, do rehearsals, and then give a concert at Carnegie, like on a Monday night when nobody else would be in there. And so some of the pieces that I've had on have been choirs that know my pieces, that have included them on their programs when they've sang at Carnegie.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
it's the coolest stage ever, though, guys. Just being on that, it's a life-altering experience, and I've gotten to perform on that stage like half a dozen times, I think.
Wow.
It's an amazing time every time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work at Westminster Choir College?
Sure. I got my DMA in 2008, and it was right as the economy was tanking. Right. And so I was like, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to be a university teacher. And then no universities were hiring during that time. And so it was a little bit of a bumpy road to get started. But I had gone to Westminster for my master's program. And I reached out to some of my former professors there and said, hey, do you guys have any work? And they said, yes, we do. You can come out. So I was an adjunct or a part-timer in the theory and comp department for 10 years. Maybe 11 before I ended up moving on from that. It's a wonderful school, and just one of the more unique academic places to be on the planet.
Nice.
It's really cool.
So your work as the music minister at Peace Lutheran Church, is that because you live in New Jersey, or did you move to New Jersey to get that position?
Well, when I started doing church music work when I was in Kansas, while I was doing my doctorate, just as a way to have a side gig. And I got the opportunity to select repertoire, direct the choir, and we did handbells, and we did a whole bunch of different things. It was really cool. So when we moved to New Jersey to take the Westminster job, that was part-time. Right. So I was trying to find, something else to fill out my days. And this Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, which is not too far from Westminster, had a position open, and I was able to get it. And I'm still there, actually. So I've been there since 2009. It's a wonderful little community. And we have a great time. Every Sunday we get to have new music every Sunday. So it's a lovely opportunity to help them out as well.
That's cool. I've watched several of the performances, and just kind of, it's a very rich and complex vocal arrangements,
Mm-hmm.
and it harkens back to something that I would have heard like in the a Baroque ages or these kinds of things. So it seems like these sensibilities, you're kind of continuing in these traditions.
Sure.
And which I think is kind of awesome. That's why I wanted to ask you, what your creative process is like in that when you go to set a new song, because you've written not only vocal pieces, but church pieces and standard pieces, mostly in this classical style. What is, when you begin a new piece, or you have an idea, or just tell me about tell us
sure.
about your creative
when I'm writing a new piece. So it's a little bit different for every piece, but if I can set as many sort of parameters for like some scaffolding as I can, then it makes the process that much more quick. Like for instance, if I get approached by somebody who wants to commission a piece for their choir, let's say, I'm like, okay, can I hear a recording? How good is your choir? Like what can they do? What can't they do? Are we talking a major work like 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 5 minutes? Is it secular? Is it sacred? Do you need it just with piano, or are you looking full orchestra, or somewhere in between? Sometimes we will talk about the text that they want to use, because with choirs, normally you need language, unless you're doing something that's a little bit more avant-garde. So for me, it's trying to set that level. And then I also am thinking, because it's part of my career, what's the market going to be for this piece after this commission? So if I'm writing a piece for a high school choir, I will make choices for them with where the ranges are. That is different than what I might do for a professional choir or a middle school choir, right? I might help them more with the accompaniment to help find pitches and make it a little bit more attainable than I might do with a collegiate group, where the piano might be a complete, if there's 4 different voice parts, the piano might be a completely 5th different instrument instead of just doubling some other things that the choir is doing. So it's every single project is sort of a singular thing that once it gets done, you wrap that up and you go on. And it's the result of answering all of those types of questions. And the more questions you ask, the more answers you get. And then by the time you get to the end, you have a piece. And, the way that a composer starts asking those questions of him or herself, how that composer tends to answer those becomes that composer's style or sort of sound. It's oh, that sounds like Mozart, or oh, that sounds like Bach. It's like, well, they're solving similar problems but in different ways. Same thing with bands, and all of these rock groups and metal groups. Those songs have to be written as well. Like what chord progressions are they used to going to? What keys do they like to play in? What rhythms do they like to bring out? Everybody has a slightly different way of answering, how do I want to make this particular song or this set of lyrics be represented? And then they just answer that to the best that they can, and you end up with the piece.
Doug, along those same lines, one of my questions is, have you reviewed, I watched a lot of your reviews, obviously, and stuff. Have you had the opportunity to review any like death metal or black metal bands and, find any kind of, like patterns, musical significance? I mean, it's all music.
Sure.
I'm not a big black metal fan. I'll just say it's just not in my repertoire. I do like some death metal and stuff, but I do appreciate the technicality of some of the instrumentation and stuff.
I don't think that I've gotten much into that. And to me, I'm like, well, I've heard some pretty heavy, like Tool and Opeth, but some of Opeth's stuff is really soft and melodic and really wonderful. So they have a pretty big range. As far as like the really heavy stuff, oh gosh, there was one. Now I can't remember it. It was on a video game. It was like one of those like really fast Guitar Hero songs. And I was like, this is nuts.
Dragon Force.
Probably Dragon Force.
Yeah.
That's right. Like somebody like dared me to do it. And I'm like, all right, fine. I listened to it. I had to like pull my headphone off my ear. I'm like, good Lord.
Yeah, that song's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Before we stray too far into we'll get into all the music stuff that you do.
Sure.
As far as like making a career out of your degrees, I think you teach, right, and do freelance, and so, and are there any, or is there anything that you dream about doing with your degrees, movie scores, or is there like a dream job out there that or are you doing it right now?
Well, what I'm doing, I will answer the first part. My dream thing, the thing that I've always wanted to do that I've never had the ability or the opportunity to do, would be to like write music for my own sort of choral album, and then hire the singers that I want to hire and the recording engineer that I want to hire and make an album. It's almost like my own personal Arion.
I was just going to say area
like Avantasia, right? If I could do that with my choral music, I would be very excited. I've had some small snippets of that where I've gotten in with some really fantastic musicians who have done some stuff of mine, and but being able like to conduct it myself and say, I like your voice, I like your voice, and I think we'd work well together, and just hire everybody and come together and do a session would be just really, really fun. The YouTube stuff is unexpected, and like people ask me, how did you do that? I'm like, I have no idea. If I would have known I could do this, I would have done this several years ago. So it was just one of these things where, you know, when COVID came about and I wasn't able to continue teaching because of COVID stuff, and because the college that I was at, Westminster, is going through a pretty major generational transition, and the enrollment is kind of up and down, and part-timers like me get kind of like tossed away when the enrollment drops. So I was left kind of without a teaching gig. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I haven't been in the private sector for, you know, a dozen years. And so I started doing a vlog because I was bored and needed something positive to do with my day. And it wasn't even until like the 40 something episode where I did my first music reaction. I as a rule, I tend to not like music reaction videos because they just seem to me like, if I wanted to listen to something, I don't need to hear somebody go, yeah, that's cool. But my brother is the one that really convinced me to start doing these. And I said, I don't like reaction videos. Why should I do those? He says, no, just talk to your phone and tell them what the chords are and tell them why it works. Trust me, they'll like it. I'm like, okay. So what I ended up doing is just doing play-by-play. It's exactly what I do in the classroom, except I'm not doing it to Schubert or Brahms. I'm doing it to Iron Maiden or Opeth or Metallica or you know, Genesis or what have you. And it's just something that I've gotten used to doing over the years, because we never have enough time to go like stop a song, break it down, stop a song, break it down. You got this song, you got this piece, you got this piece. So I'm used to just speaking in the margins of a piece, going, did you hear that? Did you hear that? That'll be on the test later. You know, and it's just a skill that when you stand up and you don't have any second takes as a teacher in front of a classroom, you just get used to just winging it, and it becomes like this odd skill that I have. So when I started doing it on YouTube, it became this fun little thing, and thankfully people have connected with it, and it's really taken off this year.
Yeah, and that's what kind of sets you apart from, you know, the general run-of-the-mill sort of reaction people, is you've got that musical background that you can break every piece down. There's another guy, Shred, that does similar things, you know, and it's really, and like you broke down a lot of music from Dream Theater, my personal favorite band.
It's a great band.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love those guys.
I get to see them live for the first time this coming November. I'm going with my buddy who's a big Dream Theater fan, and he's played Dream Theater for me before in the past. And I was like, but when I really gave it a critical listen, I'm like, yeah, these guys are at the top of their game. They really are.
You're going to be really pleasantly surprised seeing them live too.
There is tight live. Yeah, and I'm sure, I think you've reacted some of their live stuff too.
Yeah, so. It's amazing to watch them go. I think I interrupted your question though.
Oh, I was just going to say, for somebody like me who has listened to their songs thousands upon thousands of times over the years, I watch your video and I get a whole deeper appreciation for what they're doing and what's going on. It's like watching a behind the scenes DVD of your favorite movie. You know, you really get to see the foundations of what's going on there, and all the theory that's involved in stuff. And I love that. It really gives me a kind of new ears to listen to music that I've listened to for years. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. One of the main things that I try to do is I try to look, if there are lyrics, I try to look through and do almost a poetic analysis of the lyrics before I ever listen to the music. So coming into these, I have an idea of what they're going to say and what their point of view is, and generally what the topic is. So as I'm listening to the music and I hear, oh, it's going from that chord to that chord, or they've got this weird little tritone toggle that's doing this, then I can link that to a meaning in the lyric and say that's the musical puzzle piece that they're using to convey this. That's part of their musical language. And I think of it as, I said this earlier, like play by play. You know, when you watch a football game, you can see it and you can hear it, but it's really a more profound experience listening to somebody who's also watching it saying, by the way, that just happened, and just name it. Right. It's just, oh, that happened, then that happened, then that happened. And you're like, yeah, that did happen. Amazing. amazing. So it's like doing play-by-play in color commentary as the song goes by.
Sure, yeah,
it's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. And I must say you did a great job breaking down the really convoluted story of the Metropolis Part 1 and 2 and the scenes from a memory. That's a really difficult story to follow.
Did you get through that entire?
Good job.
Did you get through that entire video?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
God bless you. That was
I love those guys. I mean,
that was an hour and 40-minute continuous take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think I slept all afternoon after I did that. That was a bear. But to be honest, I think I had heard a little bit of the opening score or the overture, and I think I had heard some of Dance of Eternity off that before I had done it.
Yeah.
But I read through the script of that. Gotcha. And it really is a script, like a screenplay, with all the different characters lined out multiple times before I ever dove in to listen to it. So it was almost like reading a recipe, and then you're seeing the thing or hearing it being like made in front of you, and you're like, oh, there's that. And if I didn't have that in front of me, I would have never come close to connecting some of those dots. But
it's very tough.
It's a profound concept album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had some really nice, tender moments in that, and of course, their virtuosity shows through. Really cool album.
And the fact that you sat down and took on that entire thing was like, kudos to you. I'm like, this is my new favorite guy.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, that's part of what prompted me to start the Patreon is when I had come out with, I think it was Octavarium, and which is still in my top 10. It's one of my favorites that I've done of all my reactions. And one person said, if he did Metropolis Scenes from a Memory, I'd pay for that. And I'm like, I'm going to hold you to that. And it's the Patreon. We started it back in like the towards the end of July, like the third week of July. And the Scenes from a Memory was the first extended play that we did. Mm-hmm. So that's really what drove a lot of people to the Patreon early on. And then the next one we did was Hemispheres by Rush, the entire album. And then we did this, we included Cygnus X1, the first part from the previous album. Yeah. I think the next one we're going to do is King Crimson's entire first album.
Oof. All right.
That's going to come out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of Dream Theater, I would kick myself if I didn't take this, since I've got your ear exclusively.
Sure.
If you want to do another long one, they have a 2-disc set called 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Disc 2 is one song, 42 minutes of a nice, huge. If you want to dig into something, feel free.
A lot of people have been asking that for that one. So, how long is it? A double CD then, or a double?
Yeah,
album?
And disc 2 is just basically one song. So I would just do disc 2. Yeah. That's the 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence song.
6 separate parts and stuff.
Yeah, broken down into like 6 parts. A big suite, like they did with Metropolis. So.
The other really big one that people are wanting me to do over on Patreon is the double album from Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Yeah, it's like an hour and a half of music. I'm like, y'all.
Yeah, you open the can of worms.
I'm gonna need more than water to get through that one for sure.
Yeah, it is a spectacle. That album in particular, it is like seeing a production on Broadway. It's a musical. Yeah, it's
I was born in 1977, and then so not being a musical kid, I didn't really get a lot of stuff in the 80s. And then once I found music, I went straight into like choir stuff and classical stuff. And so I never really paid attention to a lot of grunge in the 90s or the like the alt rock sort of stuff. And I never was too into pop. The most I ever got really into, like for like personal, like just easy listening, is like 70s singer-songwriter type music. And so going back to all of these, like I got people that the 80s are their thing. For my brother, the 90s are his thing. If you saw our stuff from last week, it was like all music from the 90s. I'm like, okay, that's where he's coming from. But all of this stuff, I've never really had a chance to give it a listen. And people are like, have you really never heard Close to the Edge? I'm like, no, I never have, until we heard it. And it's boy, what a piece that was.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Might be a really maybe not a loaded question, but maybe even a dumb question. But do you find, a metal band more so than others is most symphonic to your taste? What you went through that we talked about Dream Theater, Iron Maiden, but the one that you might find that's like, oh yeah, it's like a symphony going right on.
Do you guys know Nightwish? Do you consider them a metal band?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
okay.
They're considered symphonic metal.
Symphonic metal, yeah.
Yeah. So their voicings are the most like orchestral that I've come across. A lot of these bands that are really guitar or bass driven write music that is specifically built for the how the instrument actually fits in your hands. So the riffs that are on the guitar become the type of riffs that you might write to play, versus if you're a keyboard player, then you might write things in a completely different approach. So I find that these bands that are really guitar heavy just rely on these riffs a lot, and then they may not know how to then go in and start breaking them down, and like maybe we can do them backwards, or we can bump it up an octave, or we can make each note longer or each note shorter. I can write counter melodies to it, all that sort of stuff. They end up just sort of doubling it and repeating things, and it becomes just that style. But Nightwish is really cool. I never knew that they existed before this year, and I've been into them.
Yeah.
Spock's beard and like Neil Morse. I find their stuff, the little bit that I've gotten to listen to so far, to be really lovely and quite melodic. Neil's has a real gift for crafting melody. Yeah. And even Dream Theater, those guitar solos, they're technical. They can be really virtuosic and technical, but when he wants to play a really gut-wrenching, soulful melody, he can do it as well as anybody.
Yeah.
So there's lots of great stuff that I've come across.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank
Nightwish to me is also one of my favorite. Like Nightwish, Dream Theater, Iron Maiden, like my three. That's the three, and you cover all those guys. So
what is the draw to Iron Maiden? Because for me, it's not to turn the tables on you guys, but early on. Yeah. So early on, when my brother asked me, said you should do this, I said, all right, what song should I do? He said, Fear of the Dark, Iron Maiden. And I have no idea why he picked that one. But he said the Iron Maiden fans will find you. They love anything Iron Maiden. And when somebody who's not like, or somebody who's like a classical guy gives Iron Maiden credibility, it makes them feel better about the band that they enjoy. But as I've listened to a lot of Iron Maiden, I start finding their tricks and the way that they answer their musical questions, and they do a lot of the same things from song to song. And I've kind of come up with a little, like today I recorded my Iron Maiden video that's going to drop tomorrow. I did the brand new single.
Oh yeah,
Stratego. And towards the beginning, I said, "Hey, they were playing in their favorite key. If you're playing the Iron Maiden drinking game, now is your time." But
right.
It's not a knock on the band. It's just an observation of how often they go back to those open tunings on the guitars.
Yeah. And
it makes sense. They're a band that has 3 guitar players, which I don't know of any other band that has 3 like lead guitar players.
Oh.
So Iron Maiden's been a fun band for me to get into. I really have come to admire Bruce's showmanship and his vocals.
Yeah.
Especially, this many years on. He's still just pumping it out. And I admire them for their long.
Yeah,
I admire them for their longevity. They've got, this is what, their 17th album.
Yeah.
And and you know, they put the work in. They go out on tours. They bust their asses, and they deliver every single time. What's not to love, you know?
Maiden is another band that you should see live. As they're
my gosh.
Yeah, they're a different level.
They're a live band. But to your question though, Doug, I think what appealed to me, the very first song I heard, and I'm not sure how much other Maiden you've listened to that you haven't done reviews, but it was on the album Peace of Mind, and the very first track is called Where Eagles Dare. And I'm a self-taught drummer, self-taught guitarist. It's this great drum intro, and you know, Maiden's got those galloping beats. And what I liked so much about Maiden, the heavy, aggressive sound, but their songs were not about drinking and getting laid. They were doing, Where Eagles Dare is based on the Alistair MacLean book, you know, the movie with Clint Eastwood, and, you know, the World War II saga where they're going to find, you know, Hitler's eagle's nest and infiltrate it. And they had songs about Dune and about, you know, things that, you know, science fiction and fantasy, history, mythology. And so it was like elevated themes, and then the music kind of followed along with that. And there was no other band like that, that new wave of British heavy metal.
What was that song? I think it was off of Book of Souls. Is it Empire of the Clouds?
Yeah, Empire of the Clouds.
Yeah.
I'm like, what band writes about an airship disaster from the 40s? That's cool.
Yeah,
I'm sure there are kids that got, you know, that passed history classes because they learned Iron Maiden lyrics.
Or English class because of Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Right.
Exactly. You know, we
Yeah.
did that in English.
I did that same thing for one of my intro to poetry classes in my undergrad. We had to write down a poem, and I asked the teacher, I said, "Can I write down the song instead? Because it's so long." She's like, "Yeah, fine." So I wrote the whole song out. But I think that's the appeal for us metal guys, is why we like them. And you know, they've had their you know, there's this arc, and I think we need to absorb the newer stuff. For me, they've had these moments of just greatness. Like, you've played some songs off of Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
I've done half the album.
Yeah, which is my favorite album. I think that was like the pinnacle of their, you know, they kind of worked up to that, and then they kind of took a dip, and then they came back. Or other albums, something
so far those tracks I think are my favorites of the ones that I've heard. Besides Empire of the Clouds, I really did enjoy that one as one of their later ones. I really liked the nuance in that one, especially with the added keyboard in there. I keep waiting for them to invite me to be the keyboardist for that. I could do that one. I think
that would be awesome. Yeah,
I could put on a black shirt just like everybody else.
Sure,
it's fine.
Sure. Wait,
can you wear leotards like Iron Maiden though?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, some spandex.
Well, they've kind of moved away from that in more recent years. There used to be a lot of spandex
outfit from Bruce Dickinson. Yeah, don't wear the frog outfit.
Back in the 80s, it was a lot of spandex.
Well, now that we're talking about, you know, your YouTube channel, Doug, I mean, what has been the most rewarding aspect of doing these music reaction videos?
Hearing from people that it helped get them through like dark times during the pandemic has been, it just blows my mind away, because I was in a very dark place about this time last year when I started this. In fact, like just a few days ago was our 1-year anniversary of the first Daily Doug. And I had lost, you know, 2 of my 3 part-time jobs because of COVID and other circumstances. And I'm like, what the hell's going to happen? And starting to connect with people, you know, I was really jaded on music for a time, you know, as a choir person, you know, and somebody that sings in choirs, that directs choirs, that writes vocal music. And that's kind of what I get paid to do typically. When we're told you can't do that anymore, like at all, I'm like, well, do we sit at home and twiddle our thumbs? What do we do? Right. So there's been people that have told me like that have complimented that I have like a nice approach or a personable nature, and they turn on the videos and they feel like they're among friends, and you get to kind of escape from other you know, stresses for a little bit and just concentrate on some art. And the community that we've built here is so supportive, and they're just really great people. I think our internet, our comments section is one among the nicest on the internet.
Truly is.
and on our Patreon, we have a private Discord. It's like a subreddit. It's like a private Daily Doug subreddit for people that are on that are patrons, and we talk about food and concerts, and we argue about albums back and forth, and but everybody, it's so supportive and just really, really great people. That's been awesome. the most rewarding thing.
Great.
That's great.
Yeah.
I did have a question. You have mentioned this a couple times, and I'm a metal guy. I mean, I like all kinds of music. But I do really enjoy metal, and being a metal drummer for much of my life, I know you don't like double bass drumming.
The double kick drum?
I can see
doesn't like the double kick.
And I want to know what it is about it that you don't like, and or can you understand why metal fans do like it?
Of course I do. So I will give you a real answer, okay?
Yeah,
because I have thought about this. So anymore, when I mention the double kick, it's kind of shtick.
Okay.
Like when I was in the Metropolis video, I was like, "Hey, double kick, drink." You know, it was. I try not to piss off the drummers because I know it is a very technical thing to know how to do. And trust me, as a keyboard player, the last person you want to piss off is the drummer. You know, the lead singer, they're fine. You know, but if the drummer is mad at you, then you're in trouble. Here's my thing. When I hear that double kick that goes on and on and on and on and on, as a composer, in my mind, I think that the intent is to add power and intensity to that particular passage. And in my mind, doing that actually takes away the intensity.
How does it do that? I'm intrigued, because to me it's the exact opposite. To me, it pushes it even into a more intense experience.
It's whenever something happens in my mind that becomes automatic and stays, and it's a very quick sort of thing. It becomes the most prominent thing that happens, right? So, like when I hear Danny Carey. Thank you. When I hear Danny Carey in some of Tool's videos or their stuff, do like a double kick drum for maybe 6 or 7 or 8 beats and then go into something else. He's used it as a filler or a lead in to something else instead of a bass palette to underscore an entire section of the piece. And that I'm perfectly fine with. When I hear people that goes and they're just going and going and going, I'm like, cool, they can do that. To me, the piece loses. I start thinking about all the other things that they could have been doing to enhance the rhythm or feed into other things or do something syncopated or anything that's not just the exact same repetitive sort of sound. You don't hear it very often in classical music, but when they do use it, the more sparingly something like that is used, I think the more impact that it has. So if it gets overused to me, then I'm like, could you have done something different? A little bit of
spicy mustard, not a whole lot. Right.
Tis true.
Okay.
Tis true.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, on so that's my point of view on that. And I'm not completely against it. Plus, my particular ears, my sensibility, I'm not used to that, right? I'm historically not as used to that. So when it starts, I'm like, holy, you have to, it just kind of blows me out of the water, and it gets me off from where I was thinking.
Okay.
Right. So it kind of takes me out of the piece. So that's kind of the genesis of my lack of yay.
Okay.
I get it. I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes total sense. As you're approaching it as a classical piece. You know, Tool is a very different style of band than like Slayer.
For sure. You know, I also understand though that as for people that have metal sensibilities, that they're like, yes,
right,
I'm gonna get them. You know,
we remember when the double bass began. You know, when bands started using double bass, and it was just mind blowing at the time. Like, wow,
but you can't
more.
Right. You got to hear Angel of Death. You cannot hear it without the double bass. You know,
Sure.
I mean, Dave Lombardo was like one of the early proponents of this speed double bass stuff. And now, you know, it's become just part of drumming, but a lot of bands, depending on the style of metal, there is that kind of syncopated stuff. Like you're going to hear on Opeth, where you're going to hear it reserved, and it's going to be matching with the rhythms of the guitars and the melodies. Then Slayer, being the speed metal band they are, that's part of what makes that genre or aspect of the genre what it is, you know. So no, I just want to get your feedback, and I appreciate that. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, it's
no hard feelings.
No, not at all.
No,
just understanding. No, I think it's
Thanks
great.
for clarification. Yeah,
I think it's great because I appreciate that you're bringing these sensibilities to listening to these songs, and it's nice that we can share that, because to me that was what was so exciting. Like, you know, and it took me much longer to get into symphonic music and classical music. So, you know, I appreciate that we're kind of coming to the same place from different aspects, different times. Go ahead, Chop Top.
I think also, you know, goes right along lines like David Gilmour of Pink Floyd said in an interview that less is more. And, you know, he has such great sustain on certain notes and stuff, but in that one note, what he had the meaning behind it, you know, he doesn't have to do like a double bass, let's say, you know, and everything else to get that point across. That one note and that sustain, it sends a whole different message. So right along with what Doug was talking about, with sometimes it's overkill with that double bass, and you know, and thanks for his clarification on it.
I've had so many composition teachers tell me you need to write, you know, the right number of notes. Like if you can say something in 8 notes, that don't use 12, because it muddles the message. And so for us, it's all about refining. Once I get a musical idea, it's like, how can I do that differently? How can that approach? So I start asking all those questions. So when I hear a drummer go to that and then stick with it for a while, I'm like, I start asking myself, what could they have done differently? What might I have done differently? As like writing a percussion part, because I love writing percussion parts in orchestral settings. They're just fun to try to figure out how to do. They're also very difficult to try to communicate to these orchestral players, you know, what to hit and what to hit it with and when and how hard. And then, you have to put that instrument down. You have to go over to this instrument. You have to give them enough time to get there, you know, and then you pick up this ballot and then you start hitting that with those instruments. So it becomes very tricky to write that. It also is very tricky to write trap set parts, you know. So it's one of those things where, you know, you just kind of work as hard as you can.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. I apologize for that. Dog was going off in the background.
So has listening to all of this hard rock and metal influenced your own musical composition? Like, are we going to see a choral work set to some kind of Opeth-like sounds one of these days?
You know, I haven't written much since all this started, because I've been so busy trying to keep up with it. I'm like, there's demand here. I haven't had demand for much that I've done for a while, like demand like this. So I think I'm going to ride this wave for a while. So I haven't written much new music in the last, you know, half year, but there's some things that these bands are doing that is helping inform me. That's a different tool that I can use if I need to have this sort of sound. That, you know, especially the Iron Maiden song that the new one, Strategio, that I recorded for tomorrow. It's in E minor, but they've got this opening. They start on the E, they go up to a B, which is a fifth higher, right? Like the power chord. And then they play a B flat. And it becomes this diminished fifth. I'm like, that's interesting. Writing a diminished fifth on a tonic chord is not something that I would normally do. But if you're bringing about conflict and unresolved conflict, because that B flat doesn't resolve, right? They set the perfect fifth and then they give you the tritone. It's like, right? There's some shit that's about to go down, and then it's unresolved. And then the very next chord, they go back to another tritone over the C. And then that one resolves like optimistically, where the other one is left unresolved. I'm like, we can respond to these conflicts pessimistically, or you know, with hope, and I'm tying it back to some of the lyrics that are in there. But in the background, I'm thinking that I can do some of that stuff. If I ever need to have that in a choral setting, how might I voice that? I've also been reminded of just how powerful the pentatonic scale actually is. And a lot of these bands, especially Tool, listening to Tool last Friday, just these riffs that they're just playing. And Tool just, that piece, Tempest, I listened to, they're just hanging out on D minor for just a long time. And it's just playing the riffs. And then they start playing over it. Just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm taking notes for sure. One of the other things that is tricky or that I've appreciated about all this music is it seems to me like these guys aren't trying to like reinvent the wheel every time they write a song. And for a long time, especially with my compositions, I was trying, like, what have I not done that nobody else has ever done, and how can I fit that into this piece? And in the 21st century, it's been done. With these 12 notes in our equal tempered system, it's been done. So just write your music. Don't try to figure out what is new or old or in style or not, or what hasn't been done or what hasn't. And if you've used that in a previous piece, but you want to use it here, go right ahead. It's your music. It's the personal sort of freedom that these artists are putting out, and the courage that they have to put out their stuff. It's commendable, and I am taking notes.
Nice.
Yeah, once that metal gets in your bones, it's like a fungus, a fungal growth. You're not going to get rid of it.
I'm relatively
it's in there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like, if there's one instrument that I really don't know how to write for, it's the guitar. Because the guitar, 'tis not in a symphony orchestra most of the time.
Yeah.
And so you learn how to write for the clarinets and the oboes and the trumpets and the horns and all the saxophones occasionally if you're writing for bands, and you learn all the transpositions and ranges and all that sort of stuff. And the guitarists are over there just jamming, and they're they either just want a chord chart or they're playing unbelievable virtuosic stuff that I could never write for them anyway. So it's very tricky for me. It's like I'm in a space that I don't really technically, from like the technical playing of the instrument, understand as much as a guy like Rick Beato on YouTube, who has a great channel, and he's a guitarist and can play these licks back to us. And it's really fun to watch him work as well.
Doug, maybe along those lines also, I have a question for you, because I'm a self-taught guitar player and playing since 13. I'm average, but I noticed like it's taken me a long time. Like, it's been months since I picked up the guitar again. It's a lack of confidence or a lack of, like, a writer's block thing. Like, I just, it's hard for me to pick it up again. Is there any advice to that like you can give to say, hey, just start picking up, start wailing, start doing, anything that when you go through other musicians and stuff that struggle with that a little bit? Or
one thing that helps me is just to practice and practice improving. When COVID, when we were home, like with COVID, the one thing that I did have access to was our church, and nobody was ever there, and it has a really nice grand piano. So I would go over on most nights and just play. And Megan, my wife, at one point said, you should just put a microphone out and start, and just roll tape. And I've got just a rudimentary little, mic here. Not like really great stuff, but I would just roll tape, and I'm like, okay, it's cool. So what would happen if you hit the voice recorder on your iPhone and set it down and then just started playing? Like, what type, and you have to get into the mindset of whatever you just played is right because it exists. And now how am I going to react to it? So even if it's a wrong note, it's like a Bob Ross painting. It becomes a happy accident, right? So you just color over it because it's an improv, and then that happens. So you can go on to the next thing. And you'll just get to trust your own instincts a little bit better. And you'll learn that, just by just physical just reaction or intuition, you'll find the notes that need to come next. And that's where I typically go if I have writer's block, or if I'm stuck. I'll just start in a completely different thing. I'll put that pie down and let it cool over here, and I'll start another cake, and just play and see what sounds you come up with. And if you're recording it, you can go back and say, what was that? That was cool. How did I hit that chord? And then try to figure out what you did. But that would be my suggestion, is just practice. And if you know that some device is picking up what you're playing, then it makes it more of a game. It makes it fun. And you always have the ability to completely erase it too, if you want to. But it gets you, it just gets the flow going again without any pressure.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate
No problem.
Part of the joy of watching your reaction videos, any reaction videos, is seeing the honest reaction. Not that it's canned, but when someone begins to pick up and identify the same elements of a song or a band that you love, and they start going, oh yeah, and picking it up, there's something really very satisfying about that. Like, it's like you want to share what you love with someone else so much that when they finally get it, you're like, okay, this is good. So that I just wanted to, I don't know if you were aware of that aspect of the relationship between the viewer and the producer. That's what's so satisfying on this end, is other than your musical ability and just kind of deconstructing a song. But there's that moment where you see someone pick up on that, because this is normally music I'm guessing you wouldn't normally listen to unless, but I guess that's a long way of saying that's what's interesting about it. And if you're, now that you've done this music reaction videos to a lot of these bands, are you listening to them now outside of doing the reaction? Like, is Rush on your playlist now? Are you listening to Ginger, on your own?
Well, not that particular band much, but I have started to listen to more of these bands. In fact, I listened to Camel for the first time like last week, and I thought that was really cool. And I thought, I'm probably never going to go back to like their very first album because it's all instrumental. So I just put it on the other night and just had a bottle of wine and chilled to it. It was wonderful. Oh. Right. And that's part of the issue too, because I'm like, okay, should I not listen to something and save it as a reaction, or should I just go ahead and listen to it? And that's an added element that's become quite weird. Right. To have to deal with. But I've also had people say it's okay if it's not a first reaction. If you know the song and you can break it down for us, that's fine too. Uh-huh. So I've done some of those as well. In fact, the Ghost of Tom Joad that we did last week, I mean, that's a song that I've heard many, many times, but I wanted to come out and compare the different versions of it. It was very fun.
Nice
to do that. When the most I've ever got, people have mentioned, to your point, was the Close to the Edge video. When I said something about, oh, there's an organ in there, they're like, just you wait, because it's gonna knock you over, and it did. So people have said they're just sitting there. He's going to get to this part, and I know he's going to get to this part. I want to see what happens when he gets to this part. So I know that there's that sort of element to it.
Yes.
I've also had people that are also listening to these songs for the first time themselves appreciate sort of a guided tour through the song, and then they can listen to it on their own after the fact and be like, yeah, I remember that. He said that. That's cool. So it either way, it works. For me, it's just like being in the classroom.
Oh, that's cool, because especially in a band like Ginger, when you hear Tatiana break into that death metal growl, if you're not expecting that, like on Pisces, which is the song that a lot of people have gotten into.
I've done that one.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
And I like that moment when she first starts going the death metal growl, and like you see that surprise. That's rapturous, because I'm not used to hearing women sing in that death metal sound, although there are other bands out there like that. But I find Ginger be super exciting because all the syncopation and just the odd time signatures, and they're just really interesting. It doesn't get repetitive and boring, but it's nice to see that reaction.
For sure.
But
Yeah, that was like my hobby for 2 months, just watching Pisces reaction videos. Some of them were
I did the same,
priceless.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's you can't fake an honest reaction. I mean, and I talk with my brother a lot because he really is invested in these. He's like, you should have done this or you should have said that. I'm like, if I did a reaction video to the same song 10 different times, I'd have 10 completely different reactions. I'm just saying what pops into my head at any given moment.
Mhm.
There was a song I did by Haken a couple of weeks ago, and I meant to talk about some of their really neat vocal lines at the beginning of that Cockroach King song. It was really cool. And I ended up just not. And I got to the end I was editing it. I'm like, didn't I talk about that? Well, crap. I can't go back and do it again because it's not a reaction anymore, right? So it's just, you just hit the record button and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Awesome. I want to go back a little bit, just asking, who's your favorite composer?
Ooh.
Or maybe it'd be better if I asked if you could go back in time to see one historical composer conduct one piece of music.
Oh gosh, that's a whole different question.
Yeah, well, okay, there we go.
Well, the answer that I normally give to the favorite composer question is Mendelssohn, Felix Mendelssohn. And the reason why I say that is in sort of the mature era of European concert music, like what we consider classical music, you have four main sort of eras. You have the Renaissance, and then the Baroque era, the classical era, the Romantic era, right? And each of these has different sorts of sensibilities. Bach and Handel from the Baroque era, their music sounds a certain way. Vivaldi is the same way. Those are three writers from like the mature part of that era. Then you get into like Haydn and Mozart, which are more melodic, and it's simple, like 4-measure phrases that are easier to follow and not quite as virtuosic as all the moving lines from the Baroque era that were part of that style. You move into then a response to all of those straight, sort of simple, not simple, but more easily digestible melody and accompaniment style of music from the classical era. And you get into the Romantic era, and they start stretching those forms and dealing with, they get a little bit more instrumentation. The orchestras get a little bit bigger. They add more percussion into it. And Mendelssohn, for me, who was working in the early to mid 1800s, is sort of a synthesis of that Baroque sensibility, the classical sensibility, and the Romantic sensibility. And I've never met a piece by his that I didn't like. I think he's underrated. I mean, he's wildly known, but way underrated as a composer when it comes to like in that top echelon that everybody else always points to. Love his music. In terms of like what would I want to go back and watch somebody conduct, I'd want to watch Gustav Mahler conduct his Second Symphony with me in the choir. I got to do the Resurrection Symphony at Carnegie Hall one time, and it's a life-changing experience. It's one of the best symphonies. It's one of my favorite symphonies. It's a long piece. It's over an hour. Wow. But boy, if you ever want to be moved by a piece of classical music, listen to the last movement of Mahler's Second Symphony. That's where the chorus mainly comes in, and it's baller. It's really, really, really cool.
Nice.
Thank you.
It just occurred to me as you were talking. I don't know. This may be something you could consider around Christmas time, but I don't know if have you reacted to any Trans-Siberian Orchestra?
I haven't reacted to them
live.
I know their stuff. I mean, I've heard there's actually, being from Omaha, that's also where Mannheim Steamroller is from.
Gotcha.
And so I know Chip Davis, and I know Jackson Berg who's played in that group for a long time, as well as Jackson's wife, and so I know kind of that genre of music, and so I've heard a lot of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. That'd be fun to do around December sometime.
Yeah. And there a lot of those guys came from a metal band called Sabotage, as well as their producer, that was kind of his whole love child, was the Trans-Siberian Orchestra project, Paul O'Neill. So
totally works.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a couple weeks ago, the band Accept was doing a cover of the Moldau by Smetana, I should say, and a Czech composer. And it was a really, really well done cover of that. I mean, if you get a classical piece, it's got a really great melody. There's no reason why a guitar can't play it.
Have you done any reactions to some of the metal bands that have done concerts with orchestras accompanying them, live orchestras, like Metallica, their S&M stuff, or Dream Theater did some stuff with live orchestras?
So I think Illumination Theory, I did from Dream Theater's DVD with the Boston Orchestra, one of the Boston orchestras. I've done a couple of the S&M, one of the newer S&M and one of the older S&M from Metallica. I need to get into more of that, though. There's not a ton that I know of that sound really, really good.
Yeah, it's kind of hit and miss, really.
I tried to do one with Steve Vai at the proms, like the BBC proms, and the orchestra just wasn't mic'd very well at all. So that's a logistical issue when you get an amplified instrument like the electric guitar playing in generally an acoustic ensemble. It becomes quite an added layer of complexity to get the instrument to actually, have some cohesion with the rest of the ensemble.
Nice.
Cool. Chop Top is fading to black over there.
Yes, getting darker.
Yeah, let me get some light on. I apologize. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
It's the Daily Doug after dark.
Yeah, that's right.
Here, I'll my There's my ring light is off now.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit since we are heavy metal horror, and I just want to ask you: Are you into horror at all? Horror movies?
Horror movies?
Yeah.
No, I'm a big old scaredy cat.
Okay.
Like when I was a kid, I was freaked out by the Goonies.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goonies.
Yeah. I'm like, guys, bullet holes.
So I guess asking about The Exorcist is probably way off base.
I have seen it. But it's been decades.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be an intro or segue into movie scores, and there are some really classically well-known musical scores. But do you have a favorite movie score, something that really moves you, or that when you listen to it's like, oh my god, I can't believe this was done just for a movie, something like that?
Let me answer that this way. John Williams is one of our best American composers of all time, right? Even though he's a quote unquote movie composer, but there's two scores that he did that are diametrically opposed to each other, and they're both brilliant. One is this little movie with Tom Hanks called Catch Me If You Can. It's really jazzy and really spunky, and then you listen to something like Schindler's List and it just breaks you, right? The music in that and the solos by Itzhak Perlman are just gut-wrenching and breathtaking, and that movie is perfect, partly because of the score. So those scores are really, really phenomenal. I also like stuff like, when like the Forrest Gump soundtrack has all those classic songs on it, how great was that to be able to just to have basically an Americana greatest hits of that era all in one, CD back when, before we had all of the streaming stuff.
Really grounds the movie in the viewer in that time frame.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of nostalgia.
Absolutely.
Which is what you get in the soundtrack to Guardians of the Galaxy, that kind of thing. You're in this great 70s music, like,
it's wonderful, right? And one of the things that I'll lift up, like, it's 2021, right? So I'm on the board of a little regional orchestra, and one of the board members was like, we should just do a piece like we're celebrating our 50th year. We should do a piece that was premiered 50 years ago. You would be hard pressed to find a playable piece of concert or orchestral music worth anything that was written in 1971, because the classical composers had, like the typical like classical composers were continuing this tangent into like musique concrète, like, and avant-garde and stuff that really wasn't melodic and stuff that really wasn't designed for a 19th century ensemble like the symphony orchestra. But where people were writing that stuff was in movie scores. That's where they all went. So the people, like, that style of music never left. It just kind of went to where the movies were, and then this kind of went off on a different tangent. The 20th century for music, kind of just fractured into all of these different streams. You've got jazz, you got country, you got rock that comes in, and then you still have like all these different classical stuff. People are still writing Baroque style music, Renaissance style music, and like chant stuff from like earlier on, and it just all becomes a sort of their own lane. And all of these composers that were wanting to write these big sweeping movie scores or these musical scores that had really great melodies and lovely harmonies found a home in movies. And so that's where all that stuff kind of lives anymore. It's come full circle a little bit where it's coming back, and you could find many other examples since then. But in that little pocket of time in the late 60s and then like early 70s, you'll be hard pressed to find like a really good just symphony hanging out that people would pay to come watch.
Yeah, and I think of an example of that is like the soundtrack to Planet of the Apes, which is all full of discordant percussion and strange instrumentation. I think it's to represent the topsy-turviness of this world that the astronauts came across.
Absolutely.
And speaks to that. And that's one thing I think I love about movies so much. When I think of, like, growing up as a horror kid, I used to love watching the Universal movies, Dracula and Frankenstein and stuff. Those scores, the Hans Zimmer scores, are just wonderful. And then Hammer films in the 50s and 60s, again, these just big sweeping Baroque style kinds of scores that they stay with me, and
like I love listening to Henry Mancini. His stuff is just sumptuous. It's really, and there's lots of these artists that find their way, and it's a direct outgrowth of, in music, what we would call a tone poem. Like the composer Franz Liszt was kind of the father of the tone poem, which we mean by that, like a programmatic piece of concert music. So like the theme to 2001 is from one of those tone poems, and they just reused it, right? So you would have these 18-minute, 20-minute pieces, even longer, that were just storytelling through music, but just concert music, and before movies existed. So movie scores existed before movies. Now we just get that really fantastic art form that puts it all together.
Nice.
And nowadays, even video games. So there's some video games that have just incredible pieces of music in them and scores, and
Yeah. And I'm largely outside of the gaming industry, but people have shared with me some really fantastic music, and it takes a different style of writing. It has to like have character motifs, and also has to be loopable so that if you're in something, it can keep you like engaged, right? Well, if the music's continuing to go, maybe I should still be playing, so it's a whole different way of connecting with an audience when it's interactive like that.
Sure.
Now that you've done so many, changing gears back to reaction videos.
Sure.
So we have only a few questions left, I think. What kinds of music are you looking forward to reviewing? Like, are there genres that you really want to explore more of, or bands that you have heard of and you're looking forward to review? Because I think we could probably all ask you, like, say, try this, like what Dreadbull had done before.
I had to.
I know. We all have suggestions for you.
It's I honestly I kind of blinked on it. Say your question one more time. Let me.
Are there any particular genres or
Yes.
even bands that you've heard of that you're looking forward to reviewing that you haven't reviewed yet?
I'm
you would like to review.
I'm still in the mode of trying to play catch up. So my brain hasn't really gone to like long-term planning, or I'd really like to do this, or I'd really like to do that. I'm just really saying, I'm just trying to keep all of the juggling of all these different styles. And luckily I've connected with a couple different little subgenres of fans where I get like some like prog people going, where the hell is Yes and Genesis? And like the metal fans are going, it's been like 8 days since you've done an Iron Maiden video. Come on, and I am finding I'm starting to get people from places on the planet that I'm not as familiar with sending me stuff from bands from like Israel, from Chile, from like Hungary and Russia. And I'm like, this is some cool stuff. So I'm thinking about branching out into like non-American, like Western Europe centric music, just so it can be new to all of us. That's really something that I would like to get into, just to round out a little bit of what we're currently doing.
Oh, nice.
Your viewers will keep you busy forever. There will never be
forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to suggest, I don't think you've ever done anything by Merciful Fate or King Diamond. Have you done a reaction to?
I have heard of King Diamond.
I would ask politely to consider doing. There's a great live version of Sleepless Nights, which is a good song.
Diamond Sleepless.
Yes, it's a YouTuber performance. And if you're going to do a Merciful Fate, that was Diamond's band before he split off and did a solo thing. There's a song called 15 Men and a Bottle of Rum, which I think is, which is a pretty great
bottle
of
rum. That's not much rum for each man.
That's right.
But we will still give it a listen.
Right. Listen. Guys, do you have any more questions for Doug?
No, I'm looking at my list here. I've got one note here. So I started jotting down notes and questions 2-3 weeks ago. And I don't know what I was thinking here, but it just says Nightwish with a big exclamation point. I don't know what I was getting at, what I meant by that. Maybe I was in some kind of weird state of mind. I probably did that early at work one morning, but I don't know. Anyway, Nightwish.
Nightwish. If I remember right, Fear of the Dark was my very first one, and then we did Rime of the Ancient Mariner. That was my second ever, and then I did I think a Tool piece and an Opeth piece, because that was all those were influenced by my brother. And then after that, the first one or the next one was the Nightwish Ghost Love score, and it was the first time I had ever heard Floor sing, and I was just
incredible.
Like, I would have like, she could sing Led Zeppelin and I'd be happy about it. I'd rather hear her sing than Robert Plant any day.
She is amazing. Yeah, I was a big fan of hers back when she had one of her early bands called After Forever. Yeah, and I think she joined that band. She's like 16 years old or something ridiculous. Really, really young.
Unbelievable, vocally talented, and the way that she can really change her her vocal approach based on where she is in her range and what the music needs is outstanding. Plus the fact that she can like belt like a high A flat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bonus.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of bands that would, be very happy with a lead singer that can handle that.
Yeah, she was my choice when their original singer left. I was like, please get Floor Jansen, and they didn't, but they did eventually. So all in all,
great stuff.
Really,
older Queensryche, Take Hold of the Flame. That you get to hear Jeff Tate in his.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, he's got a great range.
For a long time, the only thing from Queensryche that I ever knew was Silent Lucidity, and I had no idea that Operation Mindcrime existed.
Oh,
right.
Man.
Yeah, that's their pinnacle. But and if you want to if you want to punish yourself for something and you want to hear a song with really, really, really fast double bass drums, I'm going to suggest
ready for this.
Nile.
Nile.
Nile, the Blessed Dead.
The Blessed Dead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds about right for some double kick drum.
Yeah. And if you want to watch the drummer, his name is George Colias, Kollias. He has plenty of videos. We're just watching him play over top of the tracks. It's like his feet are like machine guns. It is insane. So, but it's not just straight blasts for 5 minutes. He's all over the kit, blazing speed. But anyway, there's some suggestions for you, Doug.
Awesome.
Well, you've gone way over your suggestion limit there,
I know. I gotta be done.
Well, let's hear from Chop Top. I mean,
come on, Chop. There's something out there, man.
Yeah, other suggestions. Oh boy,
Garth Brooks. Okay, Garth Brooks.
You answer. I mean, I'm a huge, probably my number one favorite band's Iron Maiden of all time.
Awesome.
So, gosh, there's some suggestions that same things out. And the Tool was very interesting. I love your reviews on Tool. And Danny Carey's just a monster. He's like,
they're a great band. They're as rhythmically advanced as any ensemble I've ever seen.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's really, really powerful. Do you like the new stuff you've heard so far on the Iron Maiden album? Or are you kind of the reserving judgment for the rest of the
Thank you for that. I pre-ordered the album, so it's coming out Friday, but I did enjoy it. Writing on the Wall is different. There's a Southern kind of rock riff to it. And something in Stratego, typical Maiden fare, but still enjoyable. I was still enjoying these two tracks more than Book of Souls overall. Book of Souls, I was excited when it first came out, and after like a year, I'm just like, I don't go back to it as much.
I've also noticed from looking at the track listing, which is now available online, and the duration of the tracks, the two that they've released are two of the shorter pieces that are on both of them. They've got some nice 10-minute plus tracks. That we haven't heard yet. So I'm really curious to see what's hiding or what's available to us. The other thing that I read today when I read in and did the Stratego reaction is that they recorded that in 2019 and it's just been sitting there until this comes out.
Right. Because of the pandemic and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah. So I guess that's why it's a double album. So
yeah, they locked it up. Amazingly, there was no leaks at all. They locked it. They recorded in France. And it's just amazing this day and age. There was not a single leak.
Cool. Yeah, we'll probably do a review show of that at some point in the near future.
Dreadbull and I both kind of feel similarly about the last few albums that Maiden has put out. It's still Maiden. It's not as exciting as some of their other previous works. It kind of hits a level quickly and then stays flat. Gets there and then doesn't go anywhere once it's there, and it gets a little repetitive. But
it's mature. It's mature Maiden.
It's something. Yeah, it's something. But but we could say that as fans. It's not like we don't like. We love the band, so we're just trying to be honest, and we know what we're used to. But we also are willing to. They've gone into a prog journey. Like if you listen to the album "A Matter of Life and Death," and
great album.
Great album, and Final Frontier. A lot of really truly proggy stuff on that album, which some Maiden fans have been screaming, "Oh, you're going prog." I love that when a band can grow, and I'm willing to grow with them. You know? Like Rush, they've all gone through stages, and I love to see that. So U2 has managed to do that relatively successfully throughout their career as well.
There's some of their albums sound completely different, than the previous one, and cool. Good on you.
Sure. Yeah. My favorite era of U2 is the first couple 3 albums up through War. I like that raw sound. It's just like guitar, bass, and drums.
Back when they were learning how to play their instruments.
Exactly, precisely, and it sounds like that. But see, there's an honesty to it, because when you get to the time when you get to like Achtung Baby and Discotheque, it's so overly produced, and I know they're having fun with themselves, a little tongue in cheek. But it's like a completely different band, and the elements that I liked about that band they got lost. And so when I listen to U2, it's October, it's War, it's those early albums that I'll go back.
I mean, Bad is my favorite song of theirs, and it's only got 2 chords. It's not about the complexity. It's about, can you deliver the lyric, and how does it move you? And that one, it's just rock solid. And the Joshua Tree is like my favorite album of theirs, personally.
Mine too.
Nice.
Could talk music all night, y'all.
That's fantastic. We have had a great time to get to know you, and we just thank you again for all your reviews. We're going to keep on watching. We're fans, and we just really appreciate you spending some time with us. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I'd love to come back if you guys want to like catch up some other time. Just let me know.
That would be awesome. We'd love to have you back anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug.
All right. Well, you can listen, find Heavy Metal Horror. Oh, Doug, would it be too much to ask you for a little bumper saying like, this is Doug Helvering and you're listening to Heavy Metal Horror? Would that be too much?
Sure. Let's see. This is Doug Helvering and you have been listening to Heavy Metal Horror, the best podcast that you've never heard before.
Excellent. Thank you. Nice.
Thank you,
That's
Doug.
perfect.
You can find Heavy Metal Horror on unsaneradio.com. You can listen to full episodes or download to your device. You can find us on Facebook at Heavy Metal Horror Podcast. On Instagram, look for Montag Lewis, MONTAGLEWIS, one word. And our brand new YouTube page, Heavy Metal Horror Podcast. This has been Montag, Master of Illusion.
Chop Top.
And Dreadbull.
And
good old Doug Helfring.
And you've been listening to Heavy Metal Horror.
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you.
Oh, man. Thank you. Oh, this has been so much fun, Doug. Thank you.